So this talk is called Supplying Drupal * projects being all materials. First of all, I want to do some disclaimers, some parental advisories. This is an introductory talk. It's little beyond 101. Like most talks, it will be opinionated. Take it with a grain of salt. Do your own research, always. It is a little bit outside my core competence area, so I heavily underestimate the effort of giving this talk and didn't manage to cover everything I wanted, but also I fear some of the things were far beyond the introduction, so I prefer to keep it simple. It is about security, compliance, but above all, as always, it's about thinking. So if you are not comfortable, this is not your brand of whiskey, you can apply the 2-5 rules and go outside and enjoy the rest of the sessions or the DrupalCamp. And first of all, also, I will want to thank you, our sponsors, because we tend to put these slides on the end of the presentations, and they deserve some thanks because we are here because they are sponsoring the event. A little bit about me. Mostly of you know me very well for years. Call me DevSecOps, XOps, sysadmin. I have been around almost 19 years. My Drupal profile will be 19 next week or the week after that. And now I'm currently working on 1x Internet as DevOps lead. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know a little bit more about you, especially the people I don't know. So, everybody, please raise your hands. Everybody? Don't be shy. So, down your hands when you are identified with the profile I mentioned. Everybody? Hand. Are you a security expert? Down hands. The rest, keep it all up. Are you using SBOMs currently? Anybody is using software bill of materials right now? No? Anybody knows what a software bill of materials is? No? Anybody knows what a software supply chain is? I know, you know, most of you, of course. So, software supply chain. This is the modern internet. Let me introduce it. And it is all held by a small project someone is maintaining it in his free time in a little town, maybe in Nebraska. And the day that person goes crazy, he didn't need a rifle and go to a school and kill people. He can just fuck you up, breaking it. What the hell is a software supply chain? According to Wikipedia, a software supply chain is composed of the components, libraries, tools, and process used to develop, build, and publish a software artifact. According to InToto, a software supply chain is the series of steps performed when writing, testing, packaging, distributing software. A typical software supply chain is composed of multiple steps chained together that transform and verify the state of the project. I'm reading it because I cannot keep it on my head. According to ChatGPT, it refers to the process and flow of building software components. So, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Most of you maybe are developers. Yeah, you are developers. So you are the producers of the source code. And you produce source code, and then the source code got built, maybe with Composer, maybe with an NPM, some package manager, and then the software is deployed to the consumers, the users. Once upon a time, when I started with Drupal, around 2005, just to supply a Drupal project, you download Drupal from Drupal.org, then uncompress it, add modules, themes, hack the core, kill a bit kittens in the process, upload to a hosting with FTP, luckily, and you subscribe to Drupal.org security list, and maybe Debian, maybe your hosting provider security list, and that's all. Your server was supplied to the customers. A fun fact, DrupalConf size in Amsterdam was 70 people. Now here are around 300 people. Nowadays, a typical software supply chain looks quite differently. You are using a repository, you are using Composer, you build your thing with Node.js, some libraries around. I'm looking at you. And then either use software as a service deploy, you are maybe using Akia, Pantheon, Platform SH. Maybe you are deploying the code to the hosting with rsync, or maybe a Serrano, Capistrano, deployer, Robo, wrappers around a sync tool, or either you containerize the application and you distribute the container. It is much more difficult to get posted about security nowadays. Trick or treat. It's almost Halloween. What are the threats to the software supply chain, both to you as producer and to your customers? Maybe someone can submit unauthorized changes to your repository, or your repository might be compromised, or your build system might be compromised, so it uses another repository to build it, your software, or you may be using a compressed dependency, or you might be using a legitimate dependency, and then the package got hijacked, or your build process could be compressed. Maybe someone in the middle can intercept your communication when you are building the software and give you a source which is not legitimate. So this is the threats to your work. This is the threats that affect your customers. Are you scared? No? Nobody minds about it? We can go for a coffee. Oh, anyone here have heard about XSET incident this year? 3, 4 people in the room. XSET is a compression library used by Linux kernel, among many other projects, which was comprised in the software supply chain. A guy, nobody knows who he is, started building reputation on the library 8 years ago, 5 years ago, and that then was promoted as maintainer of the library, and he didn't change the source code. He changed the GitHub action, which built the binary that Linux distributions use to package the library. And the hack was that the comprised binary injected a dependency on SSH server, so anyone which has a malicious key can access to that server. That was the last noticeable software supply chain attack. But if you think slowly about what you are using, how many packets, both PHP packets or Node packets, are using in your process? Any of them could get compromised in such a way. So what are the takeaways about the software supply chain? It has been always there, but they were quite simple. In fact, just a makefile, and more or less that was all. Now they are more complex. There are more tooling around it, and I think everybody should be concerned. Everybody providing software or service around software should be concerned about the software supply chain and know how it works and what are the risks. For me, thinking is always important, and this is a correct process in software development. Try to avoid brittleness. Now I'm entering, I'm being too quick. I'm entering the second part of the talk about what a software bill of materials is. It's not a new guy on the block. It has been for almost 15 years around. Again, some definitions. Very, very vague definitions. According to WASP, any of you know what a WASP is? So, for the rest of the people, a WASP is the organization bailing for open source security. They give you the guidelines and the tooling to improve the security in software building and Linux distribution, things like that. They maintain a thread list. It's a very good resource of information, but their definition of software bill of material is quite vague. A list of ingredients in a recipe. According to the National Telecommunication Information Administration, the United States Department of Commerce, you have two definitions, and maybe more definitions, even in their docs, but quite vague again. For me, a software bill of materials is traceability object. Think about when you go to the supermarket and buy an apple. If you got sick because eating that apple, the supply chain have to know where that apple came from, where it have been every time between the producer and you, so they can isolate where is the problem. Software bill of materials help us isolating where is the problem in the software supply chain. They are being used for software inventory management. I don't know if you maintain 10 projects or 1,000, but I bet not all your projects are using the same components. So you have to, in case there is a security advisory, in Drupal is quite simple. It's once a month, I think, the release date. But if any vulnerability appears in any tool you are using to build your software, or as a dependency, I think it is good for you to know the moment it happens, not 2 weeks before when someone has hijacked your client data, or you are being suited because of a leak, or someone is stealing credit card information from e-commerce. They are using for security, for software inventory management, for license management and compliance, because sometimes projects change its license model, and sometimes your contract is tied to being using open source, or you can be using GPL but not a Fero or another kind of license, and it might be another legal reasons. There are a couple of links about it. And we have two competing standards when we talk about SBOMs, or software bill of materials. One from OWASP, focused on security, and the other is by Linux Foundation, were more focused on license compliance. I can't tell you which to use. For me, the sensible thing nowadays is using both, because each one gives you a different point of view of your software inventory. There are also converters. Why should I care of it? It is for me. I can tell you, in my opinion, hell yes. You have to at least give it a try. Know what it is, and when a customer or maybe your project manager asks you, we are signing a contract, but they are asking us about how our software supply chain is, you should at least know what it is and what it is useful for. It can use to track automatically vulnerabilities. For me, it's the killer case of this. And industry regulation and moving towards it. Even in the European Union, when they are talking about AI, they are asking for things like software bill of materials. Then in Cyclone DX, there are a draft of how to inventory your AI components in your projects. Does it work the fourth? It always depends. It depends on your size, how many projects do you have. Always process maintenance tend to be a pain in the ass. So you can give it a test drive and know if it is for you. There's a module for that, as always, in Drupal. But I think you should avoid it, because the module itself requires proc open, which is quite weird to have in a production server. The vulnerability database for that module is local to the Drupal installation. And you will need also the binaries of the native tooling. So what is the advantage of putting it inside Drupal? For me, no. If you want to do it raw, just from the scratch, it is quite simple. There will be a repository with the Docker files. But it is like put a PHP container, include composer dependencies, Git, zip, that's it. Pick Composer 2 from the official image, Composer create project, and then you got the container build, copy the build directory from the building container to a scratch container, and run this code. And you will be presented with software bill of materials on Cyclone, Shift, and SPDX formats. That's it. You don't have to do anything more. What do you do after that with that output? Which can be more complex, but more useful. Docker have a tool to generate the software bill of materials itself. I don't recommend it. It only supports one format, and you need a local registry to run it. So for me, again, my opinion, it is not worthy. The tricky and the ugly. There is not standard recipes for doing this nowadays. I bet next year or the year after there will be a GitHub action that you can just put in on your CI, and that's all. And if you are new or security is not in your core competence area, it is easy to get lost, to get distracted by the information. There are huge amount of information about this on internet. Takeaways. You can start toying with it tomorrow. It's not that hard. And it can help you thinking about your processes, how you build the packages, how you deploy it. It's a tool to improve your thinking and your knowledge about your own processes. You want to go beyond, you can go to Salsa, in Toto, or Dependency Track. Dependency Track is the tool I wanted to put in the presentation, but I finally didn't. It's a software from OWASP when you can upload your JSON files, produced by the Docker container, and you got your project inventory with the dependencies, and it connects every day, 3-4 times a day, to all vulnerability databases, and send you an alert if anything you are using it is on the databases. More reference, more pointers, and that's the talk. That's the talk. I have added these 3 last slides because I think the worthy part of it is thinking, always. This year I found the efficient security principle. Have any of you read this article? It basically says nobody cares about security unless you are required to. For me, it's a pity. It's a pity because I realize it is true. And I'm a user. I'm not only a builder. I'm a user of technology. And when I read the article and thought about it, I realized, so in fact, I don't know how the service and tools where I'm putting my money and my data in are caring about security. This phrase is from James Clear. Pedro Cambra told me when I was writing the presentation in April. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. For me, this phrase is important in 2 senses. It's important to have goals, because you don't rise to it, but you can aim to your goals, and it makes you better professional, and you might not reach it, but you will rise above where you are now. But always you have to have a safety net. So when I think about building software, I tend to introduce these kind of tools in the very backbone of the building process. Not introducing more brightness in the process, but embedded it so in the future, when I need it, they are there. Never be a sheep, install your brain. And that's all. Questions? Please.
Anyone?
At what point in your software supply chain, where do you introduce it? It depends on what kind of artifact are you building. Because in theory, you have to use it in all the steps of your building process. And now Drupal.org is introducing cryptographic checksums on Composer, so the package can be verified. You have to add proofs of building to every step of your building pipeline. So the moment Composer brings the package, you have to store the cryptographic hashes or the checksums if you don't have cryptographic hashes, and that software bill of material gets added to the next step. If you put that in a container, to the container, and the theme, and you are building it in every process of your pipeline, just adding stuff to the bill of material, because the order doesn't really matter if we are not talking about the building scripts itself. And again, you don't have to aim for the full-fledged software bill of materials. You can start simple, just the Composer one, or just the Composer and the Node one. And if it pays for you, it is worthy for you, you can start adding more in depth after that.
So, well, good session, by the way. Thank you. So it's related to what you were just saying. I'm thinking about, okay, so first step could be to integrate these kind of tools with composer.json or package.json for the node dependencies, but of course that would be the application level, but the applications run on top of servers, which also have
of
dependencies.
Course, but if you are using containerized applications, the container itself can be analyzed by these tools.
Sure.
So you have the package, but not the server level itself. You can run it on a bare metal server, but
okay.
it is not that frequent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. I was just thinking about, I mean, server level, after all, has some dependencies itself, libraries or even OS packages. My question after all this is, what would you recommend as a first steps to go beyond analyzing those dependency files as composer.json or package.json?
The first step after that, when you have a software bill of materials, for me, dependency track. It is a beast of its own, but for me, it's the next logical step. But also, when we are building nowadays software, sometimes we are tempted to use a GitHub action or a GitLab component or something like that, and there are more dependencies in your software supply chain. So you have also to add any tool you are using to build your software to the bill of materials. because if someone hijacks a container used by an action, it is crazy, but it's so brittle. The comic image is quite real, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exponential.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, really interesting. Thanks.